Hello, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub. And of course, our friend today is Sharon from the WellSpan Wellness Center. She's the woman who we talk with about addiction and trauma and all those kinds of things. Hello there, my friend. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So sorry, I've got weird sunlight and I've got funky things and sometimes I might look like that. So I'll try to get out of the sun as much as possible.
Well,
So
I look like I'm in the dark, so
yeah, so we've got a whole little lighting thing going on here. So today's topic is resiliency. So we've been talking about a lot of things about trauma, about things that happen in your life that you don't even realize, or you may not realize, or that you do realize, that have like affected your life. And so today sort of turns that corner and sort of talks about, well, how can you be resilient? And resiliency, and I'm not defining this, but resiliency doesn't mean that you're like a steel wall in front of you and nothing bounces off. That's not what resiliency means. So let's explore that. So Sharon, tell us, what does resiliency really mean? Because I don't want people to think that like the opposite, like the wrong thing.
resiliency basically is about being able to bounce back,
Mm.
bounce back in the face of adversity, that it doesn't get you down to the point where, you get depressed or start drinking alcohol or doing illegal drugs or overdoing prescription drugs because you can't cope. And a lot of people just don't realize that they can't cope any other way because they don't have coping skills.
Well, how do you have resiliency? Is it like you just have it? Like you have the color of your eyes? Or like how do you get it?
some some people, it's multifaceted, Kelly.
Yeah.
Some people are born with personalities that they can kind of, you know go with the flow. It's like water off a duck's back. Things don't really get to them.
Mm.
And other people are born super sensitive, and you look at them the wrong way and they're ready to cry. They get hurt very easily. So that's nature. It's kind of our personality and how we're born. Then there's also the piece where our environment teaches us how to cope. It teaches us to acknowledge, I'm feeling sad, lonely, scared, uh, and they'll walk with us through those feelings. Okay, so now can we take a deep breath? Can we really process this? Can we maybe learn to not take things so personal? Sometimes somebody's having a bad day. It's not because they don't like me, it's because they're having a bad day. But if my perception is that they're being the way they are because they don't like me, that's going to wound me more than if I can say, hey, they're having a bad day. Sorry about that, but I'm not going to own that. Does that make sense?
Mm, it does. That can be hard, right?
Absolutely.
So
And especially when you're a child,
I
because
was
when
gonna
you're,
say, like, that sounds hard for adults. Like in that moment when someone says, "Oh, just go away from me," you you can feel it's all about you. What did I do to make you feel that way? And then you take on all that yourself. As an adult, that's complicated. So what happens if you're 5 and that happens and your brain hasn't grown enough to be able to process all that?
that's why it's important to have that protective factor built around you that I think we talked about,
Yeah.
where you have adults in your life that can help you do that. Because at 5, even at 10, you still pretty much believe the world revolves around you.
Of course.
Everything that happens is because of you, about you. I mean, that's just developmental.
Right.
And some people never grow out of that. You can be 90 and they still think the world revolves around them.
Yep.
So, with a child, you always, always, always want to acknowledge what they're feeling. Like I can remember going home from school and my feelings were really hurt. And I said, I'm just really, really hurt. And I was mad. And my mother said, "You're not mad." And I'm like, "Oh,
I sort of
I'm
was.
not." And then she followed that with, well, what did you do to deserve that?
Oh.
And it was well intended. She really wanted to, did I say something wrong? Did I, butt in? What was my part in the interaction of getting my feelings hurt? But
you hear it that way?
yes. So I wasn't allowed to have the feeling, oh, you're not angry, which really I was hurt. We never talked about the hurt. And it was, what did you do wrong? So now I have all these feelings, but it's my fault. So I just bottled them up. Where in a different scenario would have been, I'm sorry your feelings were hurt. How about let's talk about it? When you get angry, what happens? What do you do when you get angry? Oh, well, you shout at people. Okay. Maybe we need to look at your feelings were hurt, and they were hurt because was that person being kind when they hurt your feelings? No, they weren't being kind. So always looking at, not that you want to say, oh, that's a bad person and like poo to them,
right?
But get them, were they acting kind? Were they being mean-spirited? And one of the things I know, you probably hard to believe, but I was really skinny as a kid. I mean, really skinny. I used to get jokes made. Do you jump around in the shower to get wet? Turn sideways and stick your tongue out. You'll look like a zipper. I mean, really, really cruel, hurtful things because I was so skinny.
Wow.
I even had a gym teacher come up to me. She was a big woman and put her hands around my waist and said, I can't believe this. Because I was just so skinny. I mean, I really was skinny.
Yeah.
And that was very hurtful to me.
Huh.
And, affected my body image and how I dressed and wanting to wear bigger clothes so people couldn't see how skinny I was. And I mean, all of that.
Yeah.
And it could have been dealt with in a different way to teach me more resiliency skills. When people are making jokes about how skinny you are and laughing at you, is that really kind?
Right.
Are they really a true friend?
Right.
So you aren't saying, oh, they're bad kids. You're just pointing out their behavior. But we often don't take the time to sit and talk to our kids like that.
Well, and I can hear people who are watching this saying, so that kid needs to figure it out. And those parents are just soft. Who cares how that kid feels? Figure it out. Because those people learn those things. That's how they were taught as kids. That's how their parents taught them. And so so they're saying, why are you going to raise your kids soft like that? Who cares about your feelings all the time?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and
it doesn't, and that's not an age thing. That's how you were taught thing, right? Because I don't want people to think that that's an older generation thing. That's not what I'm saying. There's people who believe that who are our age, younger than us, whatever it is. So what do you say to those parents? And okay, we know that those are the parents who are not being there in the way we're talking about for their kids. So what do you say to those kinds of parents to get them to hear it?
Well, what I usually say, just because of experience, how did you feel when that happened to you?
Yep.
Because the parents that are trying to teach their kids just suck it up,
yep,
that's what they were taught.
Yep.
And they don't know any other way.
Right.
And this idea you have to be, tough and just suck it up. But then look at, what do you do to be able to suck it up? Do you overeat? Do you oversleep? Do you eat too much, too little? Like, what is your coping skill that doesn't support health?
Right. Are you angry all the time? Do you smoke cigarettes? Do you not
trust people? Do you assume the worst in every interaction you have? Oh, they're out to get me. Well, what we really want, what we need to do to help build resiliency is protect our kids as much as we can. And protection doesn't mean take them out of the situation.
Right.
It means
Right.
walk with them through it.
Right. Right. And also allow them to experience things that might be uncomfortable for them, but talk about that uncomfortability, talk about the growth, talk about why sometimes that's important. It's good to do things that are hard, or do things that are difficult, or do things that you feel uncomfortable, sort of, depending on what the situation is, because you can learn from those kinds of experiences.
Yes, yes.
You can learn more resiliency skills.
If a child is supported through their pain, they learn resiliency skills. They learn that support is critical. Having someone who has your back is critical. And having your feelings validated is critical. Because if you don't, when mom says you're not really angry, I learned to not trust myself. I learned to not trust my feelings.
And you also learned to not talk to your mom when you were feeling those feelings, because she wasn't going to acknowledge them.
Right. Yeah. Well, because I didn't have them. So I couldn't own that I had them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So it becomes this big vicious cycle of really trying to protect ourselves from pain, and we don't have the bounce back to do it. So some of it, long answer to your question, some of it is personality and nature, and some of it is nurture. And you have the combination. So we want to teach adaptability. We want to teach flexibility. We want to teach kindness. Those are all resiliency skills. And we want to teach them to not take things so personal. I think that is one of the biggest problems. I see this in my work so much. People get so hurt, and I had to learn it too.
Yeah.
Don't take things personal. Yeah. When somebody's being mean-spirited, that says a lot more about who they are than about who you are.
Right.
Yes, it still hurts. Yes, it's still uncomfortable, but it's not because there's something inherently wrong with me. It's because that person is acting in a mean-spirited way, and I am taking too much of that on.
I know adults that didn't figure out some of that stuff until they were over 60.
Yes.
And that makes a lot of their, especially professional relationships, really difficult, because they end up not trusting almost anybody, because they think that everybody's pretty much out to get them.
And that goes back to that internal model of the world that we talked about in one of our little meetings here. And if your internal model of the world is that people are out to get you, you're going to see people out to get you everywhere you look.
Yep.
Because that's what you're looking for.
Right. That's right. But if
unconsciously, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't act in that way, you say they're fake, they're phony, I can't trust them. The real them is going to come out sooner or later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just being kind to someone who has that internal model doesn't necessarily change it.
Right. Because they're like, well, what are they going to do next? They're going to stand.
What do they want? What do they want?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I think that, one of the ways that people can help teach their kids more resiliency skills is that's what parenting classes essentially are. I mean, yeah, some of it's the physical stuff that you may not know how to do well, but most of parenting classes that people can take are about teaching your kids how to have better skills, so that even when they're 2, and when they do something that, hey, it's all right, how do you feel? Let's talk about this. I know that, I am no expert on this field, but I have learned a lot from all of you guys, and I use this much more, and I'm much more aware of it when I talk to my niece. And like, she'll have a little moment where she freaks out. And I'm like, hey, what's going on, sweetheart? And it takes her a couple seconds to like switch herself. And I'm like, are you mad? Because I want her to like decide what feeling it is.
Mm-hmm.
And putting the vocabulary to that is a whole process.
Yeah.
Like, are you mad? And she, like, I can watch the wheels in her head think,
Mm-hmm.
are you hurt? Yeah. Tell me why. What just happened? You know, and then so I have the luxury that I'm her auntie, not her mom. And I say the luxury because I'm not with her 24/7. I wish I was, but I'm her auntie. So, you know, I'm not tired by all the situations and the 24/7-ness, and that can be really overwhelming and hard. Of course it is. So as an auntie, I can say, let's talk about this. And I take way more time than a lot of other people would, because I'm also fascinated to see how she thinks, and I want her to talk about it.
Well, and that's a wonderful skill that gets developed. And one of the things that is really an issue is families don't eat together anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't sit down at 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever,
Yeah.
and have a meal together. Even families that now, because of COVID, can't be out and running around and driving through McDonald's on the way to soccer and, you know, all that craziness.
Yep.
They still don't sit and eat together.
Yeah, and that was always a rule at our house, that you had to do that. And you also had to talk. You couldn't just sit there in silence. And I know the point. I thought it was dumb at the time. There were a lot of times where I thought it was the stupidest thing. But as an adult looking back on that, we grew as a family because of that. Not always the best time, but we talked about stuff, and not always the best way. But we did stuff, we learned, and we had, no matter what was going on, there was going to be family dinner. Even if it was sandwiches, there was still family dinner.
Think about what you learned. Your family was there no matter what, good or bad. Your family was there. That's resiliency.
Yep.
You have somebody to kind of count on, get through the tough times, whatever.
Yep.
You had somebody to share some things with.
Yep.
Because you can't just all of a sudden wait till a kid's 10 years old and say, okay, let's talk.
Right.
Well,
right. They've already developed.
They're going to look at you like, what planet are you from?
Right, because it's not part of their regular thing. Right.
Yes. But if you know that even 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, Sunday dinner, we're going to have dinner together. It's not going to be arguing and complaining. We're going to, how are you? How are you doing? How was your week? You'd be surprised how much comes out in those conversations.
So literally changing one habit.
Absolutely.
Can put you on a path to making it better for your family.
Correct. Yeah, and a lot of people, when you talk about parenting classes, I taught parenting classes for years, and people are so reluctant to come because they think, oh, I'm a bad parent. Only bad parents go to parenting classes.
Yep.
But you think about it, when you have that baby does not, whether you adopt or have a natural birth.
Yep.
That baby doesn't come with a booklet of instructions.
Not even close. And the booklet of instructions that you could read is somebody's opinion that may or may not fit into your cultural world, may be old, might be not well researched. I mean, who knows what book you could pick up.
And what, a 300-page book that's 10 font. Now you have a new baby. You're going to sit down and read it.
Right. At your 2 o'clock in the morning feeding. Right.
Yeah. So I think if, again, that perception that if I take a parenting class, it's because I am a bad parent, rather than if I take a parenting class, it's because I want to be the best parent I can be.
Yeah.
I want to provide a foundation of safety and trust and connectedness for my children. How can I do that? Especially if I didn't get it. And again, not to fault anybody, but if I didn't get it and don't have it to give, what would stop me from learning?
Right. And do you want the same things for your children that you had, or do you want it to be better?
Yeah. And that can sometimes be kind of a catch-22, because
Yes.
if it was good enough for me, it's good enough for them.
I mean, yeah, if you had a nickel for every time you heard that,
Yeah,
you would be the Queen of Sheba.
right. And the interesting thing is, when you really engage with kids and you really take parenting classes and learn all these things, and some of it is like, oh my gosh, no way. And others like, oh, wow, simple, have dinner together.
Yep.
You know, those kinds of things. But we learn a lot from our kids.
Right. They'll
Because
tell you those things without telling you those things. You just have to be aware of what they're really saying.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And kids are so good until a certain age of being brutally honest. I do not like that shirt, Mom. Please don't wear it. Okay.
Oh,
Now, a little gentler approach might be, hey, Mom, could you wear the shirt you had on yesterday? I like it better.
yeah. My niece once told me, she looked at my earrings and she goes, those look like bacon. They were gold, but the way they were shaped, she goes, those look like bacon. And I went, well, is that good? She went, nope. And I was like, all right, I'll be taking these out since we all think they look like bacon, and we'll move on. But you're right. You're right. If you listen to kids and hear what they're, and listen to it, not just hear it, they'll be telling you, I wish we could have dinner more. Will you talk to me? Why don't we hang out more?
Yeah.
It's just the way they say it. You might not be, and if you're busy, hello, who isn't? If you're stressed, hello, who isn't? If you're under pressure, like all this stuff that's going on in the universe right now, you as a parent are going to be significantly less likely to just let it sink into your brain, as you've talked about, rather than just doing amygdala conversations and having that fight or flight stuff.
You know, one of the things that I found in my previous career, when I worked with adolescents who had addictions, and you know that you hear a lot of kids say, my parents don't care.
Yep.
I started getting really curious when they would say that. What makes you think they don't care?
Yeah.
And across the board, the majority of the time it was, they don't know what I'm doing, or they let me do whatever I want to do.
Oh, we could talk about that 6 ways to Sunday. Oh, we could do a whole episode on kids need a schedule, and kids need a whole format of life that you can help. Oh, we could do a whole thing on that. Yeah.
Well, they need boundaries.
Yep.
And part of adolescence and growing up is resisting the boundary.
Yep.
We call it rebellion, but it really is developmental.
Yep.
They need to know how far they can push. But think about, we don't have a lot of boundaries anymore. You can pretty much dress the way you want, wear your hair the way you want, stay out till after curfew, because is there a curfew? Because nobody enforces it. So when they get pushed back on, like, you get your driver's license and you can only have one other teenager in the car with you.
Right.
Well, like, that's not a rule, it's a preference. So they fill the car with kids.
Right.
Because they never learned the difference between rules and preferences. And believe it or not, if you care, and I'm not talking about the rigid,
right, of course,
dictator type,
right,
but I'm talking about, for the most part, these are the rules in the family. That all helps build consistency, which takes away anxiety.
Right.
That's resiliency. Bouncing back. It's all that. It's all connected.
Oh, that's perfect. Sharon, as always, thank you. Thank you for this time together. This takes a topic that sounds really hard and puts it right into a place that everybody could just go, oh, that's what it is. So thank you very much. This was great.
Sure. It was
we
fun.
Will see you next week.
Okay.
Bye, friend.
See ya.